We're not from Florida, and of all the things that I think was the biggest adjustment, it was probably traffic.
So we are going to tell you about the truth about traffic in Florida.
And we're getting started right now.
So what we've noticed coming from Wisconsin is that there is a lot of 3-lane roads here in Florida.
Yeah, definitely way more than pretty much anywhere. I've been across a lot of the United States. I'd say Cali has a fair amount of that too. But outside of that, I haven't been to nearly as many. Especially there's all the cities, it seem like, have at least one main road that goes through the city that's 3 lanes. So that's just a little bit of an adjustment that you maybe need to get used to, that you didn't think would be a big deal, because you don't have to look over both shoulders like you do when you're in the middle lane on a 3-lane road.
Yes, and that, I think it was a big adjustment, just because maybe you don't know the area. The traffic's moving pretty quickly, I would say. I mean, we're from a small town in Wisconsin where one of our main roads that was faster was 35 miles an hour.
Every time we go back, I'm like, man, this is crazy.
It's pretty slow. But we only have 2 lanes. So 2 lanes at 35 miles an hour, it's not bad. But now if you go into maybe not so much a bigger city, but to a city where you have 3 lanes, then that's an adjustment, and that, like, you have to think a little bit more about your driving and things like that.
And that comes to the next big adjustment, which she kind of hinted at. So on top of the 3 lanes, we're actually in a smallish town, and below us is another small town. Inland from us is another small town, Northport, Inglewood, Venice. Small towns, but they all have like a main road that's 45 miles an hour. Well, not Northport, actually, now that I think about it. So that, yeah, all of them do have 45 miles an hour, 3 lanes. So on top of the 3-lane action, the 45 mile an hour is definitely something that takes a little bit to get used to. And even some, depending on the part, like kind of as you get between Inglewood and Venice, it's sort of city-like in spots, but it's 55 miles an hour there. So something to think about, you know, that might be an adjustment for you that you're not used to. Like from where we're from, like 55 miles an hour or even like 45, it feels kind of like you're on a highway,
Yes.
Which here it's kind of like a highway, but then there's also lots of shopping or maybe houses or apartments or stoplights. So you're going really fast. There's 3 lanes. You're trying to figure out your turns, which lane you need to get into, and then all of a sudden you got to slam on your brakes.
Yes.
So, you know, someone's making a turn all of a sudden into a driveway and you're going 55. So those little adjustments are something that's going to take a little while to get used to.
And with that too, people in Florida, a lot of drivers don't use blinkers.
Yeah.
And I now living here, I understand why. Usually, you know, in Wisconsin where we're from, if someone puts their blinker on, driver behind knows that they're, you know, trying to change lanes, so maybe they'll slow down, let them in, whatever. Everyone goes about their day. Here in Florida,
You don't do that.
you don't put your blinker on. Well, you should, it's the law, but most people don't use their blinkers, because if you are using your blinker, you're letting the driver behind you know that you're trying to go into their lane. Therefore, they're just gonna speed up and not let you in, which is like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
People shouldn't be doing that, because you could cause an accident. So you do have to be smart and, you know, like plan for it. Maybe use your mirrors a little bit more. Know when you have enough space between, you know, the driver in front and behind, so that you have enough space. Use your blinker and go into the lane you need to go.
And one other thing with that 45 mile an hour traffic, I remember being an adjustment when we first came down and we were checking out different areas to live in Orlando. I just remember thinking how like it was like kind of off-putting or scary
Too
almost
much,
when we
yes.
went into a turn lane to take a left turn, and just feeling the wind from the cars zipping past us going 45, 55 miles an hour, zoom, 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 real close.
You can feel your car.
Yeah, you
shake
feel
a
your
little
car
bit.
kind of, because we had a really small rental car.
Yes.
And it was just like, man, like we're not like this. At first we were just like, I don't know if we can do this. And after a while you do adjust to a lot of the stuff on this list, but it does take a little while to get comfortable with it.
Another thing that you have to get adjusted to is the style of driving here in Florida. We have people who are tourists, people who live here. We have snowbirds, retirees who live here, and younger people who live here. So you have all kinds of driving styles. Retirees typically tend to drive a little bit slower. Tourists maybe don't know where they're going, or maybe it's different in their country. So the traffic laws might be a little bit different. So they're, you know, kind of like trying to figure it out. And on top of that, you add the more aggressive, younger drivers that live here. So it's a mix of everything, so you do have to be careful when you're driving and, you know, be smart. Don't try to like cut people off or anything. Like, take your time, be smart about driving so you don't get yourself into an accident.
And I think that's one of the things that makes it one of the most challenging states to drive in. And actually, just to get this out there, we do have higher insurance rates than a lot of other states because of that mix of drivers. I think is one of the main reasons there is more accidents. You get the tourists or, you know, snowbirds maybe that are new to the area, or whatever the case may be. You get some of the people driving slow, and then you got the people that live here and are just frustrated and want to get where they're going, and they're trying to drive faster. And you put all that together, yeah, you get some people all of a sudden, oh, I need to turn here last second, and maybe making a double lane change and making a turn because they didn't realize. And then you got people doing that on purpose because they're being aggressive. Then you got the people driving slow. So it's just like that mix. One thing to keep in mind is, though, you kind of have to get a feel for each city in Florida is a little different. Orlando is going to be very tourist heavy. Miami, fair amount of tourists, but more people that live there, generally just faster, more local type drivers. Here in Venice, where we live, smaller town, beach town, mostly people that are from the area until the winter comes, and then you kind of have that seasonality aspect. You got more spring breakers that maybe will come in, or tourists or snowbirds, and it just gets more congested, and the variety of drivers is different versus here in the summer. Hardly anyone here.
It's literally a breeze to get anywhere.
Yeah, it's 3 lanes, but you can pretty much zip in between them. Sometimes there will be only 1 or 2, maybe 3 cars until the next stoplight, you know, distance from you. And yeah, it's just a lot easier to get around. It's mostly locals and less people that don't know where they're going.
Yes, and because of that, I feel like even though we do get an influx of people, especially during the winter months, it's never dangerous to drive here in Venice.
Yeah.
I mean, it could if you have someone who's aggressive, and then you have like a snowbird who's maybe driving a little bit slower, so it could be a little bit challenging, but it's not as challenging as, say, Orlando or Miami, where you have a lot of traffic and you have a lot of aggressive drivers.
Yeah, and on that note, just to kind of give a little bit of an idea of the different cities, I'd say Orlando and Miami are probably the worst, the most aggressive drivers, I'd say. And Orlando, I would say we've been there a couple times since they completed I-4 finally, and it is significantly better because of that.
Better.
Tampa, I'd say, is a close third behind those two. And then outside of that, I'd say a lot of them are a little bit more
I don't even feel like Tampa's
mellow.
that bad.
It's not terrible.
Yeah, there's a lot of traffic, but it's not like...
Yeah, it's just a little faster moving, a little more, you know, okay, I got to make this double lane change to get onto this exit with the highway system and stuff. But
and
overall,
you do have a younger population in Tampa too, so...
Exactly. And then one other thing to consider too that we talked about a little bit with the traffic in Florida is that seasonality. Generally, most cities, winter months, more traffic, gonna come to more of a standstill. You know, some of the highways by the exits, there's going to be all of a sudden stops and starts and things like that, more so in the winter during your rush hours, and just in Venice throughout the entire day, since no one's really on a set schedule because they're retired and just here relaxing. All 3 lanes here could be same speed. The speed limit's 45. Expect to be going that or less. Just because people, it's not that there's a holdup, it's just that's how everyone drives. So something to think about that's, you know, going to be probably different than where you're from. You know, if it's 35, everyone's driving 40 in most cities.
Yes, and with that, I would just say, like, for us, we just plan for it. In winter, if we have things to do, we have like an appointment or something that we need to be on time, we just leave a little bit earlier, just because we know that there are going to be some holdups, and sometimes you can't, since everyone's driving the same speed limit and like side by side, you can't really, you know, weave in and out of lanes, so you get stuck behind slow drivers and it takes you a little bit longer, but you just plan for those things.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of how much it's going to add to your commute time, it really depends on where you live. Generally, like a smaller town like we live, maybe add 5, 10 tops minutes. But if you're in a bigger city like Orlando and you need to get, like, say from the northeast, you know, like a suburb up there to like the southwest, maybe add like 30 minutes in really busy time of year. Miami, I would say, is probably similar, maybe even worse. Maybe add an hour if there's like a crazy traffic backup. So that's kind of going to give you an idea right there of the difference between like a bigger city versus a small.
Another thing with traffic in Florida is that, again, you have those 45 mile per hour 3 lanes, and then you'll have stoplights a lot of times those stoplights take a while to change back to green again. So you can get stuck on a stoplight for a good, it feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it feels like forever.
Yes.
Where we're from in Wisconsin, like, I'd say it's like 30 seconds, maybe a minute tops. When we lived in Orlando and Altamont Springs area, those lights were like the worst I've ever been. Like, you could sit at a stoplight and it would, I swear it would be like 3, 4, 5 minutes before it turned green. Here in Venice, I feel like it's a little better. It's maybe a minute, minute and a half max. But
it does feel like it's forever and that you're sitting there forever. And a lot of times, if you get stuck behind a slow driver, maybe that driver and you could have made a light, but since they were driving slow, now they either get to go and you sit at the light, or you both sit at the light and you're still stuck behind them.
If you want to know more about living in Florida or moving to Florida, we got a full playlist with a bunch of videos about the truth, about all kinds of stuff and just what it's like living here. It's right here.
And if you're looking to buy or sell a home in the Venice, Sarasota area, make sure to call, text, or email me. I am a local realtor here and would love to help you.
Information for that will be in the description below. Hit the like button if the video is helpful. Leave a comment. Let us know any of your experiences or questions you have about traffic or Florida in general. Subscribe, turn on all notifications to catch the newest videos, and
Live breezy.